Recap, are you excited for Government Secrets episode 68, the first episode of 2022?
The grand finale of the epic three-part series on the killing of Mary Meyer.
Oh, but before we do that,
Yes.
This week, actually, in Government Secrets, this is a little, I mean, it's it is and it is a secret. It is and it is not a secret. But like, so on this day, January 10th, 1901, a drilling derrick, an oil derrick near Spindletop Hill near Beaumont, Texas, produces an enormous gusher of crude oil, coating the landscape for hundreds of feet and signaling the advent of the American oil industry. The geyser was discovered.
There's some good surfing right there.
Right?
Surfing oil down a hilltop over people's homes.
Well,
you know, there's people just drowning in oil and there's guys celebrating.
Yes. Just killing the life and everything. Here's the sort of secret aspect to this. At that time in the United States, petroleum was only being used primarily as a lubricant and in kerosene for lamps. But it would become the main fuel for new inventions such as cars and airplanes and coal-powered forms of transportation. What is important about this date in Government Secrets is people had been working on various forms of transportation, like figuring out engines that ran on vegetable oil and numerous other things. So when this happened,
like things that perhaps renew.
Yes, sustainable. Like, I don't know if you know this, the diesel engine was created by Adolf Diesel in Germany, and it was designed to run on vegetable oil so that farmers could be self-sustaining.
Really?
Yes. In fact, there's certain old diesel engines, because I almost did this. If you get a diesel engine that was made in like the 80s or so, you can have it converted to run on vegetable oil and fill your car up with vegetable oil. And we could have a whole network of people and restaurants that have deep fat fryers have to pay to have that vegetable oil removed. That oil you can't pour directly into a diesel engine. You have to filter it. But imagine if everybody, or just a large percentage of people, were driving cars that ran on vegetable oil, and restaurants just in their parking lot had this basically they put their old fryer oil in there, had it filtered, and you could just fill it up there. And so it would help restaurants. It would be clean burning. It would help farmers. We could do all of that. And all of that technology was starting to be invented in the early 1900s, because the Industrial Revolution, as we know, started in the late 1800s. So people were looking for ways to do this. And, we can grow corn and we can grow it and burn it and put it in its clean burning and all this stuff. So when this gusher was discovered in Texas on this date in 1901, it ushered in the horrific fossil fuel industry that has destroyed the planet and started wars and ruined everything. So,
yeah. And not only that, but they also made sure to gut and kill the whole trolley system that was in many cities throughout the United States. I believe the first trolley system was in my hometown of Richmond, Virginia, which I'd never learned about till like a year ago. There's photos around DC. They'll have plaques of what it used to look like, 100 years ago here or whatever. And there was trolley system here that's long gone. They had to get rid of all that so that it could all be gasoline powered.
Yeah. Los Angeles had a fantastic public transportation system, and the trolleys, they were bought up by, I think, a tire company and an oil company bought up.
And they kept them up great, right? They bought them up, and then they kept those trolleys just humming.
Yeah, and by kept them up humming, you mean completely scuttled them and put them in a trash heap. Yes, that's how they kept it.
They were like, I think the way to get these trolleys really working is if we just bomb them with dynamite. That'll improve the way how smoothly they run.
Yep. So on this day in 1901, capitalists went apeshit and decided this is how we're going to destroy the planet in the next 120 years.
And I just did a Redacted Tonight episode a few weeks ago on the fact that, and this even shocked me. I knew that big oil and the likes knew about climate change in the 80s, like knew a lot about it.
Late 70s even.
And in 1991, Shell even produced a video that they then scuttled, but you can watch it online, talking about how the planet's changing and climate change. But actually, it was 1959 was the first speaker at the American Petroleum Institute conference saying climate change was happening, man-made climate change. And throughout the 60s, they did study after study revealing the truth. And we now have paperwork that shows that. So they've known about this, seriously known about it since the 60s. And they did everything they could to make sure we were still running on gasoline.
They're doing great. I mean, it's like I just watched Don't Look Up. And
excellent movie.
Yeah, it's a well-made movie. It's I laughed at certain points, but and this isn't a slight on Adam McKay. It's a bummer because that's what's happening.
Well, I know that's his point.
I mean, yeah, and it's that, but it's like, which is his point, but it's also like, yeah, and nothing will happen. Like he just made a movie, basically a documentary on how we're all gonna die.
No, I'm not saying it's not a bummer, but but here's the thing though, and you and I both know this: you have to use comedy to get people to pay the fuck attention. And yeah, I'm sure it was tempting, and I wouldn't at all be surprised if he had meetings with like Hollywood execs that wanted they want their investment back. And they said, look, can't we just kind of have like, yeah, the asteroid kind of hits, but people are kind of okay. And he's like, no, that's the whole point is that this is fucked.
Everybody dies. Yeah, it's spoiler alert. But yeah, it was like, I mean, I'm glad he made it. I mean, good for him for making it. No one will wake up. No one will, it's literally, and watching everybody be selfish and fight and disagree and like,
I agree that the humor falls flat for me in a lot of it because I feel like this, like a lot of it, there's moments, but a lot of it, I'm like, this isn't funny. This is just fucking horrific.
Yeah, it's a bummer. It's just like, yeah, it's like, oh, that's how I felt. I was like, it's sort of like the end of Dr. Strangelove where they're on and they're all just arguing about the dumbest crap in the war room. And
but that being said, I want to see more of this. I want to see more fucking directors and writers and shit talking about how fucked up this system is. Because if change is going to come, people have to fucking talk about it in every way they can. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, we're just going to sit here and watch everyone and everything die. And also Adam McKay is a fan of Redacted Tonight, so therefore I love him. He could kill puppies. I'd still love him.
I knew him. I don't even know if he would remember, but I was in a sketch comedy group in Chicago in the early 90s, and so was he, with like Matt Besser and some of these other guys. So I met him a couple times, but no, you're right. I hope more movies like this are made. I really do. Especially where they show how awful billionaires are and they're fucking sadistic pieces of shit that aren't even that smart. Because that's the thing too, to overcome is this reverence for billionaires and their technology is so amazing. And it's like, no, they're just selfish, greedy dicks, Yeah.
They will come up with solutions, but all of those solutions have to fit into a unfettered capitalist system that is destroying everything. So right. It's like, but from the word go, they're not going to come up with a solution that does not fit into that box.
Yeah. It's somehow we can still have capitalism and country clubs. Is that if we can fix it that way, then, and it was funny to see how the billionaire just literally yelled and the president, she jumped out of her chair to go like,
Yep. Yeah. No, there's a lot of little moments. I did a video on it. There's a lot of little moments in that movie that are not the main point, that are some great satire about the system and the society in which we live. And also Adam McKay, of the bigger directors, is one of the few that's willing to go after topics like this, you know, or be seen on Redacted Tonight. You know, he came on for an interview once, and you know, most Hollywood is their head so far up their ass. They're like, I don't know, it might hurt my rep to be seen near.
Oh, they're not coming on Russia TV.
A long-haired hippie.
Yeah, who's on Russia, a Russia state media, like that. Like I took so much shit for being on like Crosstalk, like Peter Lavelle's show. I'm on that show, you know, two, three times a year, maybe. And I always take shit from Hollywood neoliberals for that. Like all of them.
Yeah, they're garbage human beings. It's hilarious. I mean, it's fucking incredible that these people, and they'll go on the biggest war profiting networks in the world. They'll fall over themselves to be on CNN or MSNBC or Fox News. Meanwhile, well, what's creating the most war and death and misery and destruction in this world than those three networks, or promoting it at least?
Yeah. All right, let's get into
part 3 of Mary Meyer. Continuing the JFK saga that will get me completely deplatformed.
I don't know what more they can do to you, man. They've run out of cards to play.
They really have.
So I'll mention some of the things that we covered in past episodes. Obviously, I'm not going to go through it in depth, but for anybody who hasn't heard the first 2 parts of the our coverage of the killing of Mary Meyer, then there's 2 episodes before this, and she was murdered in broad daylight in 1965. A year she was JFK's mistress. This is not something that, you know, some guy with a blog came up with. It's been well documented. And she was killed a year after JFK because she knew too much and she was talking about it. And she was a ex-wife of a CIA head. So she had a lot of, you know, she was in the oligarchy. She had a lot of big friends. And that was a real problem for the people who actually assassinated JFK, which, as we covered, I believe we begin that coverage in episode 26. If anybody wants to go back and hear that, it was the CIA, believe it or not, that killed JFK. So as I left off mentioning Leo D'Amour, the author who basically had been investigating heavily what happened to Mary Meyer in the 80s and 90s, and had been making a lot of progress. Like, he had been getting closer and closer to getting to the truth of who really killed Mary Meyer. As we said in previous episodes, the state tried to pin it on this, you know, sad patsy named Ray Crump, who was just a 25-year-old black guy, happened to be on the towpath at the same time as Mary Meyer, and not near her, just on it. And they pinned it on him because, hey, black guy. So Leo D'Amour is getting into the 90s, and the author of this book, of the book I'm referencing, Mary's Mosaic by Peter Janney, that author knew Leo D'Amour, had many phone calls with him and everything, and he's getting closer and closer to kind of revealing the truth. And Leo D'Amour interviewed Timothy Leary, who I mentioned at the end of the last episode, well-known Harvard professor, but into LSD and thinking LSD could change the world and could enlighten people. And Timothy Leary said he'd had several sessions with Mary Meyer where she had wanted to, quote unquote, turn on high-level Washington politicians to LSD and to kind of an awakening of what really matters in life, you know, that kind of shit. And so D'Amour revealed to Leary that the diary, this is the one in previous episodes we talked about how so many people were falling over themselves to try and find this diary of Mary Meyer because she had kept notes on everything she knew and her affair with JFK and so much more. And D'Amour revealed to Leary that the diary still existed, even though some had said it was burned, and that he had possession of it or possession of a copy. He also told his attorney that he had the diary in 1993. And keep in mind, Damore was a very successful author. That's not some random dude. He'd written the book exposing, a best-selling book, exposing the truth about Chappaquiddick, where Ted Kennedy, a drunken Ted Kennedy, drove his car off a bridge and left 28-year-old Mary Jo Kopechne to die there. So he already had a best-selling book in his past, well-known author. So Damore clearly had a ton of information on the truth about Mary Meyer's murder, including likely her diary. And he revealed to key people in his circle that he had that information. So, Graham, it's time for another pop quiz. For you, what happened to Leo Damore?
Oh, I bet you he had some wacky accident that ended his life. Did he have a weird suicide that made no sense, or he'd never done drugs in his life and just happened to OD on heroin that was forced into his neck, or slipped and fell on a bag of grenades, or what happened?
I'm going to give you full credit on that one, Graham. Well done. Yeah, he found himself suicided in the mid-90s. So here's the thing, though. It's not that he was just found dead somewhere, like Mary Meyer found dead with shots to her head. Leo Damore shot himself, as the author talks about it. But unlike, Jeffrey Epstein, there were witnesses. Peter Janney, again, the guy who wrote the book, says, quote, Leo Damore shot himself in the presence of a nurse and a police officer in October 1995. However, it's more complicated than just straight suicide, because Damore seems to have been driven kind of crazy over the last few years of his life, really driven to suicide. He told friends he was being followed and watched. He believed he'd been poisoned, and he was becoming more frantic and depressed. And there are definitely cocktails of drugs that can make people woefully depressed, can make people paranoid, can make people feel like they don't know the reality. And it's no big surprise to think that he's being followed, or that he's being watched, or that his phones are being bugged, considering this guy is about to reveal who killed Mary Meyer, which kind of unravels a thread as to who killed JFK. Those type of things, those type of drug cocktails are in the CIA's wheelhouse. We've covered in the past how the FBI and CIA, also getting people to kill themselves is in the CIA's wheelhouse as well. We've covered in the past how the FBI and CIA tried to get Martin Luther King to kill himself. They sent him tapes of audio tapes of him having affairs and told him to, quote, do the right thing to keep his honor. So they tried to get him to kill himself. And we also covered on past episodes MK Ultra, which was a well-known project by the CIA that involved, around that same time, the 70s and 60s, that involved an arsenal of poisons and drugs designed to destroy people mentally. So poisoning Leo Damore and kind of driving him essentially crazy is not, like, that theory is not really, it doesn't take much to get there,
I don't know. I mean, this is the same organization that just hired prostitutes to go out and sleep with guys and CIA guys. Remember when we did that story? They're just like having CIA drug sex parties. And yeah, at this point, if you've been watching this show or listening to it for even the last, not all the episodes, even just half a year's worth of episodes, you know, as Lee, you and I do, that the CIA is capable of the craziest, evil, stupidest, whacked out, dumb shit.
Most of it failed, but fucking nutty. Like
nutty. Just, they are
a cat with a walkie-talkie sewn into its stomach.
Yes. Like a chair that has a recording device in it for, Khrushchev to sit it. Like Operation Lawn Chair. Like we've done one wingbird CIA nut house story after another. So if they could get somebody to do this, they would. And let's just assume they did. When in doubt, The CIA is wrong. They don't deserve due process. I don't care. They are fucking wrong. When you wake up in the morning and brush your teeth, just say the CIA is evil. Anyone brings up the CIA to you in any conversation, anywhere, say the CIA is wrong and evil and they are against democracy. Pass the salt. Like, that's how you have dinner conversations with regards to these assholes.
Well said. And in a minute, I'm going to again just do a quick refresher on how JFK felt the CIA was evil and was fighting against them, because I feel like that's important here at the end. But I want to go into another quick, it's kind of an aside. I mean, this book does a brilliant job of tying together all of these other things that are not directly about like Mary Meyer's killing, but are all things connected to the CIA and JFK that were all going on around the same time, and all kind of, he calls it a mosaic, right? It's you lay down all these tiles and you see the big picture. And go ahead.
Well, yeah, and that fits in also. That's why this is so appropriate to do this, because that fits into the overlapping of this overall mosaic that you say, as you call it, with JFK and the Unspeakable. Because in that book, which is very detailed, it shows all these sort of tangential things happening that paint this massive picture of how awful the CIA is and these big corporations in the military industrial complex and how they operate. So none of this is outlandish or, oh, it's just some crazy tangent. It doesn't have anything. No, it is all connected. And that's why they are evil.
Yeah. And it's why I can't find red thread when I go to the store. It's people just used it all up, connecting everything. So there's no red thread left.
It's on everybody's whacked out map.
Yeah. So this is a kind of an aside, but a fairly important one. So Philip Graham became the editor-in-chief. We haven't mentioned him before, but the editor-in-chief of the Washington Post, which his wife's family, Catherine Graham, owned. Catherine Graham is this kind of well-known, big-time oligarchic family, the Blue Bloods. So Philip Graham also became a key player in Operation Mockingbird, helping the CIA control America's media, which, as we mentioned earlier in the past podcast episode, Mary Meyer's ex-husband, Cord Meyer, ran Operation Mockingbird. So eventually, Phil and Catherine's marriage falls apart, and Graham is no longer the head of the Washington Post, Philip Graham. But during his time there and working with the CIA, he had gained a lot of knowledge, such as JFK's affair with Mary Meyer. The big time media at that time did a lot of running of interference for politicians, their affairs, that kind of shit. I'd say they still do all of that now. I mean, what's done better than New York Times to run interference for everything WikiLeaks revealed? So they still do that now. But Phil Graham had a breakdown, like a mental breakdown, and apparently went in front of a meeting of the Associated Press Board of Directors, and multiple people have detailed what went down at this. So he goes in front of this massive meeting, and he said he was going to reveal all of Washington's dirty secrets, such as he says JFK's affair with former CIA wife Mary Meyer. Catherine Graham and others then started planning how to bring Phil back, under control, back into the fold. By all accounts, it is agreed that Phil Graham was sedated like that night, like pulled off stage, sedated, flown back to Washington, D.C. that night, where he was then committed to Chestnut Lodge Sanitarium in Baltimore. This is the former head of the fucking Washington Post. In the weeks that followed, Phil Graham got his shit together enough to plot to wrest control of the Washington Post from his ex-wife, Catherine Graham. Apparently, he made progress in that pursuit at the sanitarium, and eventually he got a weekend pass, because a lot of sanitariums, they don't keep people forever. You can get out. So he got a weekend pass, and he goes to visit Catherine, his ex-wife. Hours later, he's dead, having killed himself. We're told, with a gunshot to the head. This might be a good time to remind everyone what legendary CIA asset Bill Corson said, quote, "Anybody can commit murder, but it takes an expert to commit a suicide."
Wow. I'm just reminded of Meryl Streep playing Katharine Graham in the paper as this, like, you know, proud American that's trying to do the right thing. And Tom Hanks is playing Ben Bradley. And it's all just some filthy Beltway blue blood game of cat and mouse where they murder each other and sleep with each other just to protect their powerful bullshit.
Yep. And they ultimately print the Pentagon Papers basically because their hand is forced, not because they're trying to be good Americans.
Right. Yeah, they're portrayed. Hollywood portrays them as the justice speak. Yeah,
we've discovered the truth. We need this to see the light of day.
I'm not going to stand here and have you trample on the pillars of American decency, sir.
I'm like, shut up, rich guy.
They had a big meeting where they just sat around and
and I think it's fitting that was played by Meryl Streep, who's like, golly gee, I had no idea what Harvey Weinstein was doing. I didn't know because I was too busy polishing these gold statues that he got me for my mantle. So I couldn't, I just was turned the other way while he was just raping girls. I had no idea.
And it's amazing the number of times that truth about Harvey Weinstein had been said, like, on camera. Like, there's old episodes of 30 Rock where they make jokes about never go to Harvey Weinstein's room. There's like, Courtney Love was trashed and said it at the MTV Movie Awards in front of the camera. She was like, young actresses out there, never go to Harvey Weinstein's room. Like, it was said on camera.
Yeah.
All right. So we'll get into the kind of finality of what happened to Mary Meyer in a second. I just want to do a quick rundown of kind of JFK versus the CIA, because it is so important. It kind of ties all of this together. And for those who are kind of like wondering why the CIA would do such a thing as to kill the sitting president. So the Bay of Pigs happens, as we've covered before. And although JFK signs off on the Bay of Pigs invasion, what he doesn't realize is the CIA and the Joint Chiefs are setting him up. They know it's going to be a catastrophe. It's like, a few dozen people going up against the Cuban military. And they know it's going to be a catastrophe. And then they think it will draw Kennedy into having to allow airstrikes by the U.S., which will basically draw the U.S. into war with Cuba. They can retake Cuba for their fucking capitalist parties. And that's what they're hoping will happen. But JFK doesn't fall for it. And he's fucking furious because he realizes he was set up afterwards. And that's really the turning point between him trusting the military and realizing that they're fucking not on his side, and the CIA. Then along with this whole going on around the same time, there's Operation Northwoods, which never actually happened, and we've talked about this before too, but it was a plan by the Joint Chiefs to have false flags in Florida, etc., that they would blame on Cuba and blame on Russia, and it would require it would allow the U.S. the foundation to go to nuclear fucking war with Russia. Like, they come into JFK's office and they discuss first strike possibilities against the USSR, hitting them with nuclear weapons. And their belief, the generals tell him, if we hit them first with nuclear weapons, by the time they reciprocate, they're not going to be able to do that much damage. And in their view, like, only 10 million Americans would die. Like, and JFK is so disgusted that he storms out. He says, absolutely not. And he says, and we call ourselves the human race, is his famous quote. But it got all the way to JFK. Like, here's how we're going to first strike the USSR.
I know the people that run this country are psychos, and they have been for a long time. And that so many administrations since the dawn of the atomic age, there's been generals and people high up in every administration going, we could win a first strike. And and literally to throw out numbers, 10, 20, 30 million American casualties, but we can be all right. We might lose a couple East Coast cities, but overall we'll be good. And they just say that like it's fucking chess pieces.
Yeah, it's fucking nuts. They're like, yeah, we'll lose 10 million people, but you know, the ones we care about will be fine. We'll put them in bunkers.
Yeah, I mean, in the long run, this probably will help, some population control issues. So we're kind of killing two birds with one stone. We might as well, like, they're awful, awful people. And I think, like, if I always say this, like, if I were to become president, the mistake Kennedy made was thinking that the system of government, the checks and balances that make our democracy so great, would win out. And he's the president. And
he thought he had the power. Yeah, he thought he had the power to win out. Yeah.
What, unfortunately, if you ever become president of this country, you would have to do old school, like, new dictator shit and literally execute all these generals. I mean, you'd have to just you really, as you're getting ready to become president, you have to have some secret meetings and go, when my hand comes off the Bible, drop them, all of them, like immediately take them out.
Ninjas hiding in the curtains all come out at once.
just like
blow darts. Let's bring back blow darts. Yes.
Like blow darts, just tainted throwing stars, and all of them at once, so that while I'm giving my speech, they're all done.
Right. Before I walk out of the room. Yeah.
And then when the speech is over, I go, oh, by the way, all the generals are dead. The Joint Chiefs of Staffs are dead. The head of the CIA is done. Tomorrow, I'm going to announce my new plan. Anybody fucks with me, you're dead. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you at the dance.
So, yeah, JFK goes the alternate route of thinking he can slowly kind of crush the CIA. Another quote of his was he wanted to splinter the CIA into 1,000 pieces and scatter it to the wind. He aimed to decrease the CIA's funding by 20%. He fires Allen Dulles, the head of the CIA, but as we talked about last time, that doesn't mean Dulles wasn't still kind of running things, because people loyal to him still were running the CIA. JFK issued two national security memorandas, 55 and 57, in June 1961, that stripped the CIA of its covert military operational capacity and put it back in the hands of the Pentagon, which had essentially zero effect. Those memoranda had basically no effect on the CIA's operation, except that it pissed the CIA off. So, I mean, that's the thing, is once you have an organization like the CIA writing a memo saying you would like them to stop doing their horrible shit, just doesn't seem to have the impact you'd hope. Furthermore, JFK is talking to Khrushchev and back channels. Both of them were aiming for peace, but both of them were kind of surrounded by people that did not want peace, especially on the American side. But of course, the CIA knew he was doing this, so yet another reason the CIA wants him out. Oh my God, he's talking to Khrushchev behind our backs. So then JFK is killed. I don't know why. Something happened. He trips and falls into a few bullets. And although the Kennedy family doesn't publicly say what they believe, Jackie and Bobby Kennedy get a message to Khrushchev through back channels, letting him know that they know JFK was killed by domestic enemies. So 72 hours after JFK's death, Johnson escalates Vietnam. And then as that year goes on, Mary Meyer doubts the official story. She's infuriated by the Warren Report. Jim Angleton, who we've talked about extensively in previous episodes, head of one of the departments at the CIA, basically the one that kills people. Angleton, who was godfather to her children, escalates his spying on Mary Meyer. And so now I want to skip to, we spent a long time picking apart the ridiculous official story of what happened to Mary Meyer, that Ray Crump, this 25-year-old, 5'4", 120-pound little guy, randomly decided to rape her in the middle of the day, but does not even achieve tearing a piece of clothing off, just grabs her from behind, shoots her, then drags her 25 feet and shoots her again.
On wearing clothes as he shoots her that attain no blood splatters. Yep. He shoots somebody in close to proximity, no blood splatters on any of his clothing.
Yep.
So all of this makes sense. Sure.
No nitrates from a fired gun. They never find a gun. He has no history of having a gun. No one can say he owns a gun. So the only witness that we talked about the only witness is Henry Wiggins, this tow truck driver that has been called to exactly the spot where she's killed and to deal with a car that's supposed to be broken down. But then after she's killed and they call the cops, the car mysteriously disappears, probably drives off. So Henry Wiggins gives a detailed description of the clothing of the killer. But outside of that, all he can say from the distance he is that it was a black guy. The size and the weight are way off. He says 6 foot. He says 5'8" or 5'10", 160 to 180 pounds. None of that's true. Way off. So if we're assuming this was not Ray Crump, then basically all you have to answer to is, if this isn't him, how is it that someone else has on the same color clothes? They have the same color pants, shoes, and a jacket that Crump's not wearing when they find him, but they later find it in the water or something. Now, although it seems odd at first to say that the guy that killed Mary Meyer could have the same clothes as Ray Crump, the patsy, the more you think about it, and the more you understand the CIA, and the more you understand how long they, planning this for a few weeks, and how they've been spying on Mary Meyer for weeks, if not months, and they knew her route, her walking route. She did it almost every day. They knew the speed of her walking. So having a patsy there, and then because he was there all morning, he was with this girl Vivian. He was having an affair with her, so they have sex on the side of the canal in the early morning hours. They get drunk. She then leaves. He falls asleep. So when the police show up and find him, she's not there anymore. She refuses to testify in court, but she does sign an affidavit saying she was there with him. So you basically just have to answer to how could they have the same color clothes on? But you think about the CIA, the amount of effort they put into this, the amount of time they have to plan this, all that shit. There are many ways they could have had a guy in a light color jacket and a whatever color hat and a similar color pants. It's really not that tough. One, he's been there all morning. They could have fucking looked at him and gone to buy those things in about 15 minutes, probably somewhere in Georgetown. Secondly, he actually could have been drawn to that spot by this Vivian character. And it's quite possible they either paid her off to bring him there, or they threatened her family, said, we'll fucking kill your kids. Right. Who knows? She never says anything except she signs an affidavit saying she was there with him. So there's many ways that a guy who's completely a different size than Ray Crump could have the same clothes on.
Yeah, there's there's so many holes in who they're trying to pin this on in so many levels. It just and in each hole or lack of evidence, or just flat out, there's no way that could happen. You uncover even more, there's no way that could happen.
Right.
It's like one of those Russian dolls of bullshit. Like you just keep opening it up and there's more bullshit in it.
Yeah. So there's only kind of one other person that needs to, this is basically the conclusion of what happened. Or there's only one other person that needs to be talked about. And that's this guy, William Mitchell, who is not, cops don't find him there on the day of, no sign of him. No one talks about him being there. Henry Wiggins doesn't see him. None of that. Ray Crump doesn't see him. None of that. He just shows up at the police station basically a day later and says, I heard it on a news broadcast about this woman getting killed. I'm pretty sure I ran by them when I was doing my running route. So this guy's a soldier. He's stationed at the Pentagon. He verifies that he saw Ray Crump or someone who looked like him following Mary Meyer. Like he gives some distance, 1/10 of a mile behind or something. He also gives exact times that he saw these people, despite the fact that he did not have a watch on when he was doing his running. So somehow he knows the exact minute he saw these people without a watch. But this guy he shows up out of nowhere the day after to further the prosecution's case. If you missed the early episodes, Ray Crump gets off. He gets acquitted. But it's basically just thanks to the great work of his defense attorney, Dovey Roundtree. But Mitchell is completely uncooperative with Dovey Roundtree during the trial. He won't speak to her. You know, she's asked to meet with him and to get some answers to some questions. He won't talk to her. And so he just seems very much on the side of the prosecution. But why would that be? If you're just a witness, I happen to see a crime, why would you be cooperative to one side over the other? It doesn't really make sense. He then, after the trial, disappears with no forwarding address or anything. And others have confirmed that the address he lived at that time, 1500 Arlington Boulevard, was a well-known CIA safe house, according to internal CIA people. So this guy disappears, but also there's the fact that he was supposedly running during his lunch break on the Canal Towpath, which is not by the Pentagon. So why is it he drives all the way? I mean, I don't know how long that drive is, but even if it's only 10 or 20 minutes, he drives all the way to there to do his running. There are plenty of running paths along the water near the Pentagon. It doesn't make any sense that he'd be way the fuck over there. So he leaves no forwarding address, and using for a FOIA request, the author can't even find a military record of William Mitchell. Eventually, after the first edition of the book comes out. By the way, if you get the book, make sure you get the third edition. After the first edition of the book comes out, where he can't find William Mitchell's existence at all, he does get some leads to a William Mitchell, finally. And the reason he couldn't find him is because he has officially, like in state records, changed his name to Bill Mitchell, making it very difficult to find this guy. And he lives in California. So the author tracks him down and shows up at his door, I think in the early 2000s. And he slams the door in the author's face. Eventually, the author gets his hands on Mitchell's military record and finds out that it's a mess. Like, it's a clusterfuck of like missing times and locations and shit. Something very odd is going on. And when those records are shown to former military people who know a lot about military records, how they're kept, what they look like for your average soldier, all that shit, they've said that without a doubt, this guy is intelligence of some sort. Like, that is why there's so much like covering for his whereabouts and all this shit. It's to cover up the fact that he was brought into intelligence.
It's, I don't know if it's the CIA is either like deliberately going, yeah, we're involved, just like, so you better back up, like it's like a tough guy move, like it's like a mob thing, or they're just so dumb that they're just like, I kind of get the feeling it's the latter, because it's such a big department, and it's not that the right hand doesn't know what the left hand is doing. The right hand doesn't know the left hand exists, and the right hand does like intelligence ops that go in direct conflict with the left hand.
Yeah.
I just feel like they're all just.
It is a lot of people, and they make mistakes, and then they have to kind of clean them up. I mean, that's what Killing Mary Meyer was. It was cleaning up for people who knew too much about the JFK assassination.
Yeah, and then when they try to clean something up, that it actually causes more problem. Like it's just this constant, like, I don't know. They're like alcoholics that just keep getting into trouble, blaming everybody else. And then they're just like, you know, like, and then it's like the way this reads, he leaves an address that is a CIA safe house. And then his military record is just like taped together. And it's just like written in crayon, like US Army, you know, like
it's got a ton of whiteout all over it.
Yeah. There's just like a picture of a G.I. Joe doll. And they're like, see, here's his record in Korea or whatever. Like,
yeah, it's a G.I. Joe figurine, a photograph in Korea.
Yeah. And like, that seems realistic. And, you know, it's just like his base commander was Captain C. Crunch, you know, just like, who are all of his, just like.
Yeah. And also you know, when he's first joining the CIA, they don't know he's going to end up being this pivotal player in this assassination that ends up going to trial and end up getting like picked apart. You know, they think this stuff will not be a big deal, and then eventually you have someone like this author who's devoted his life. For those who haven't heard the previous episodes, Peter Janney is the son of Wister Janney, who was another CIA guy, and he knew Mary Meyer as a kid. So it's like his life's passion to find out the truth about what happened to his best friend's mom. And, you know, they don't know that shit's going to happen. They don't know someone's going to dig this deep because reporters don't generally. Like,
well, and, you know, we've talked about this before on this show and then in each of our individual shows of like, you know, when we talk about Freedom of Information Act documents, they're banking that you don't dig deep. Like they're just banking that you're just going to do a cursory thing and go, like I said, most journalists are going to ask one or two questions, do a little bit of research, and then they got a deadline and they got to get their story out and bing, bang, let's move on to the next thing. And if you sift through it, you start going, wait a minute, there's all these question marks. There's all this stuff that pops up because they can't tie up every loose. They just can't. Like you say, there's too many people and some people are idiots and make mistakes, or even the smartest people in the world make mistakes. And you can't cover something this big up. You just can't.
And a great example of that is at the very end of this episode, I'm going to reveal a memo that comes from internally in the CIA that reveals something about the JFK assassination. But it seems that no one except for the author of this book has realized the importance of this memo because it was released, you know, in a stack of tens of thousands of papers, probably from the CIA, and nobody really thought much of it, and no one really dug deep enough to care.
Yep. That's exactly it, because you have to, I mean, I've sifted through some of this type of stuff in covering Epstein, right? And it is tedious work. And I can't even go through all of it. I mean, I remember just going through, you know, they just released 2 weeks ago before they gave the guilty verdict, which now looks like they're setting us up for she's going to get off so you see where the scam is. But they released 118 pages of flight records, new flight records.
Yeah.
In it revealed that there was only one flight that Trump was on. Well, these new records show that he was on 4 more, totaling 5.
Really?
Oh yeah. You would think CNN and MSNBC would be going nuts about this.
No, because they'd have to then cover how many Bill Clinton was on.
Yes. And Hillary's been on twice.
Really?
Oh yeah. They'd have to cover all of that. So they're just like, they're not going to go through it. And flight records are tedious, and you got to zoom in because it's handwritten, and you got to really feel like, wait, what airport is this? Like, it is hard to figure out.
And I saw that a bunch of them say G, the initials GM, and she claims it doesn't stand for Ghislaine Maxwell.
Yeah, right. It's Gary Marshall, the sitcom.
It's General Motors. Actually, they were having a meeting on the plane.
They were talking about new features for the Chevy Malibu. That's what they were trying to figure out.
So back to Mitchell. The author ultimately sues Mitchell to get some answers. And at that point, he agrees to a deposition on the record. So it's supposed to, you know, under oath, if the author, Peter Janney, will drop the lawsuit. So they finally get Mitchell in a room. And they ask several hours worth of questions. But big surprise, Bill Mitchell, officially, basically answers, I don't remember or I don't know to almost everything. Even simple questions like, why did you decide to run on the canal towpath that day? Or questions like, how long are the lunch breaks normally at the Pentagon in your department? He would just say, I don't remember. Over the course of the deposition, he answered, I don't remember 53 times, and I don't know 32 times. His remaining responses were vague or meaningless.
So 85 answers of I don't know, I don't remember. 85.
Yep.
Okay.
Apparently he has no recollection of the time around when he saw a killer following a soon-to-be murdered woman.
Can't
So
quite.
at one point, he finally does answer a few questions about his name change, and he says he just changed it in the 70s. He just changed his name to Bill because it was easier. Meaning he went through all the paperwork and whatever offices you got to go to change his name from William to Bill. Just, it's easier to sign. I'd had a lot of trouble signing. There's a lot of letters in William. So
Yeah, because it's so tedious to just, when people see your name right now, they go William, and you go, you can just call me Bill, because no other Williams ever done that. I mean, certainly my dad didn't just do that his whole life.
After you say you can just call me Bill, you take a knee, you breathe heavily for a while. It's a bitch.
My middle name is William, and I can't even begin to, if somebody called me Graham Bill Elwood, it would be hard to just go, sure.
Sure. He did, however, a couple of times throughout this hours-long deposition, stand up and scream, "I didn't shoot anybody." So I'm assuming that that's because he probably didn't shoot anybody. He's probably not the killer. He's probably a guy that the CIA was just like, hey, go to this police station. Here's your story. You saw such and such following such and such. Tell them this, A, B, and C, and that was it. There's a good chance he wasn't. I mean, he could have been a spotter, but there's a good chance he wasn't even there that day. Because why send someone in to be the witness who was actually a part of it? Instead, you just send in some guy and you say, hey, you just say you saw this person following that person. Later, the author finally got some military records that showed Mitchell was, in fact, part of the Defense Intelligence Agency, which is basically the Pentagon's intelligence group. That doesn't mean he's not also part of the CIA, but it means at least he could see on the records that he was part of an intelligence agency, despite the fact during the deposition, Bill Mitchell says he was never part of an intelligence agency.
Which you have to believe, because intelligence agents always tell the truth. Like when somebody says, are you a spy? You always, and if they say no, you go, well, that's good. That's good enough for me. I mean, that's what.
Absolutely. Are you part of the CIA? Nope. Oh, damn it.
Thought we had him. All right.
We had him.
Next.
So yeah, this is basically the end of the Mary Meyer story. I have one more detail connected to JFK, but chances are this William Mitchell guy was sent in to try and further the prosecution case against the patsy, Ray Crump. This was a CIA operation that was standard in a lot of ways. They scoped out where she walks every day. They send someone in. They find a patsy. They dress the guy like a patsy. They arranged an eyewitness by putting a quote-unquote broken-down car there so a tow truck driver could see what happened. He drags her, after he shoots her the first time and she doesn't die, he drags her back towards the canal so that the eyewitness could get a better look, and then he shoots her again. We talked before about why not shoot her from long range. Like, why go to this trouble of walking up behind her, having her scream and all this shit? It's because they needed her to scream. They wanted an eyewitness. This is how the CIA used to do things, was kind of in plain view, because they felt that actually got people off of their backs, because you go, well, you saw what happened. It wasn't us. But nowadays, they just give somebody cancer and they die 10 years later or whatever.
Right.
Nowadays, they do more of the Leo DeMore style of drive people nuts until they take their own life.
Right. Just Gary Webb, you commit suicide by shooting yourself in the head twice, just standard stuff like that.
Yeah. So, and that pretty much wraps up the Mary Meyer story. But this last detail is pretty fucking fascinating. It would fit better in our episodes about JFK. But so, as I mentioned, Peter Janney is the author of this book. His father was Wister Janney, one of the higher ups at the CIA at the time. Wister Janney, friends with Jim Angleton, who is, the angel of death at the CIA, kind of in charge of assassinations. Also friends with Cord Meyer, who's Mary Meyer's ex-husband. But when they were all family friends, She was married to Cord Meyer, and Peter Janney was best friends with Mary Meyer's son. So after JFK is killed, and people know this from the movie JFK, Oliver Stone directed, New Orleans DA Jim Garrison is the only one to really lead the charge into prosecuting anyone around the JFK assassination. He really heroically goes after it despite all of the roadblocks. And during Garrison's investigation, the CIA has a meeting to discuss what Garrison is doing and how much they should care. On September 20th, 1967, so a few years after Kennedy is killed, they get together. Many of the top people at the CIA are in this meeting. At the end of the meeting, the four conclusions, they list four conclusions in the minutes. The third conclusion is the most important. Ray Roca, who's Angleton's chief lieutenant, Jim Angleton's lieutenant. This is a quote from the minutes. Ray Roca felt that Garrison would indeed obtain a conviction of Shaw for conspiring to assassinate President Kennedy. Clay Shaw was a New Orleans businessman who was in that JFK movie, and he worked with the CIA. So he had associations with the CIA. So this is them internally. This is not meant for anyone to see. This is kind of top level classified. This is them internally saying, yeah, this attorney's going to successfully prosecute and convict this guy that we work with for being part of the assassination to kill President Kennedy. And by coming to this conclusion internally, it's Peter Janney, the author's viewpoint, that the CIA is basically admitting that they were involved in the assassination of JFK, because why would they think Garrison's going to get that conviction unless there's some truth there? And it's not a public statement. This is secret. And this is what they're saying to each other behind closed doors. And so that meeting was chaired and signed off on by the author's father, Wister Janney. So this poor guy who wrote this book, and I interviewed him on Redacted, seems like a good guy, has had the fun path in life of finding out his father likely knew about, if not helped out with, the murder of his best friend's mom, and likely knew about, if not helped out with, planning the JFK assassination.
Wow, that makes for a tough Thanksgiving dinner.
Dude, a lot of his family stopped talking to him.
To the author.
To the author, yeah.
Because, of course, they take the side of the evil CIA dad.
Yeah, they view many of these family members, especially the wives, because they kind of know the most, view it as like, it's the same as the mafia code. It's like, yeah, some shit went down, but we don't talk about it publicly.
Oh God. Yeah, that's how like crazy abusive families work.
Right.
That's
like, most of these guys are abusive. He kind of mentions that most of these guys are kind of abusive fathers. Like,
how could they not be?
Heavily alcoholic. They view themselves as kind of the masters of the universe. The reason they had JFK killed was because he came in and said they weren't the masters of the universe, and they said, "Well, watch this. Hold my beer."
Yeah. They're narcissistic, alcoholic. I mean, all of this fits a very abusive profile. Of course, I have no doubt that they were abused. I'm sure they were abusive at home. I mean, look, if they're capable of doing this, you're saying they're not going to, but beating their kids would cross the line. They don't give a shit about anything. Right. Like, all they care about is their own money and power. That's all these people care about. That's all they care about. They don't care. They don't even their own kids are a liability if the kids don't line up. I mean, it's just like, yeah, I mean, this is like,
I mean, likely the only reason that Peter Janney got away with releasing this book, and they did some of them did threaten to sue him. They tried to get the publisher not to publish. But the reason he got away with writing it was because most of these guys are dead. I mean, Angleton died in the 2000s. Wister Janney, his father, died in like 1980. So it's like the fact that this old guard has died out has made the CIA at least a little less protective, because it's not their personal reputation on the line. It's just the last group.
Right. And then the CIA can play the card of like, well, that was the old days. And we're, like, that's just like when Joe Biden when it came out how awful, was it Pompeo? They were trying to have Julian Assange killed, and literally Biden was like, boy, Trump's CIA was like,
yeah.
like Trump CIA was bad, but Joe Biden CIA, they're good guys over there. They're doing good work. Yeah, it's yeah, and the CIA is very effective in like, hey, this is what happens when you speak up. You're ostracized, you lose your job. Then there's enough examples of like, no, this guy went nuts and killed himself. This guy's in jail. This person is never working again anywhere reputable. Like this is, I mean, it's in Don't Look Up. I mean, Jennifer Lawrence is this PhD candidate who discovers it. And at the end of the movie, she's working in basically a Bevmo,
Yeah.
And that's what happens when you speak up. And so it's very much
look at Kiriakou.
Yeah, look at Kiriakou. I mean, look at all of them.
They've and Kiriakou talks about some of them. I mean, this is not in most of the articles and things, but he's talked about this some on various radio shows. Like they writ large have tried to destroy his life in a million different ways. It wasn't just sending him to prison. I mean, they've dragged him through court cases. He's like spent all his money on lawyers. So the 2 years that he was able to plead out to was just the beginning. Like they've done other shit to just fuck him over.
Well, look at Bill Binney. I mean, look at all of them. Look at Bill Binney. Look at Julie. Look at Edward Snowden. I mean, even on a smaller degree, like Susie Dawson. I mean, she has to live in Russia. I mean, like the people, like their lives get taken out from underneath. Yeah. And they mess with you any way, shape, or form. And I don't know when whistleblowers need to like just return the favor.
Yeah.
I mean, when are we gonna realize we can't play fair with these people? Like, when are we gonna just like the system? We're gonna need to get signatures, and no, we need to fucking burn their houses down, and we need to fucking like.
Well, that was another point. It's only 1 second, but it's a point in Don't Look Up that I like when. I can't remember who it's between, but they're arguing about like, hey, calm down or whatever, and I think it's Leonardo DiCaprio goes, "What do you want us to do? You want us to sign an online petition? Like comets coming at the Earth. Well, let's all sign our name online that we don't like that."
Yeah, I know it's maddening. Yeah, I don't know when the world is run by the most evil people. I don't know what you do other than
well, there's a lot of steps, but the one I've been talking about the most recently is you've got to create the alternative. So it's I think we got to build up the stuff that's outside of this capitalist system that's destroying the planet, and appreciate those things most, because all of those things are threatening to the system at large. Every time workers get together and unionize, that's threatening. Every time there's they decide that mutual aid, that you're going to help people get fed, that everyone should have food, all those systems are threatening to the larger ideals.
Yeah, I mean, it's why like I'm an advocate for Panquake. I'm actually going to have Susie Dawson on my show tomorrow to talk about updates of what that's going. It's why crypto is good, but like Bitcoin specifically, I believe was designed by someone, if you read the white paper by Satoshi, that whoever this person was realized that if you take away the central bank's power, then these ruling elites, then you are really crippling their ability to wage war and extract wealth. If you're you're giving this digital currency to everybody. And you're seeing it. I mean, Joe Biden admitted it. Joe Biden said Bitcoin's bad because we can't sanction people. I mean, he said it.
Yeah, they're getting around sanctions with it, and also I just did the last Redacted tonight, the opening segment, which people can watch at leecamp.com. The opening segment is about the origins of capitalism, and it has to do with centralizing the money. Pre-capitalism, there was the barter system, but there was also a receipt system where you could, let's say, bring grain to the grain store, get a receipt that said you brought this much grain, and then you could use that receipt anywhere you wanted. So basically, it was like money, but anyone could print it. You could go to any store and they say, you gave us this, here's your receipt saying you gave us this. And so basically everyone's printing money, and it created a huge upward mobility. All of a sudden, tons of people were getting out of being the lower class and into the middle class or the upper class. And the ruling elite said, this is fucked. Yeah. We don't want everyone being elite, everyone being wealthy, everyone doing much better. And so one of the they did two main things. One is they started the chartered companies, which ultimately become corporations. And they said those receipts, non-centralized money, is now illegal and punishable by death. Literally, if you go and you get that grain receipt and you go somewhere else and you say, here's my grain receipt, I'd like to buy 5 chickens, they could hang you. And that meant that the ruling elite, the aristocracy, could print the money and decide who gets the money.
That's a great system.
It's all going great. It's going great.
I think we're doing great.
Ladies and gentlemen, I believe that's the conclusion of Government Secrets, episode 68, and the conclusion of the Mary Meyer trilogy. Pew, pew.
So next week, we'll be back to a standard, you do a segment, I do a segment, right? Is that what we're going to go back to? Or do you got another?
I have a 4-part series on tiny shoulder pockets. Yeah, no, I got nothing. So we'll go back to a normal system.
All right. I mean, I like these sort of Lord of the Rings type government secret trilogies that we do.
We've only really done 2 of them, I think, JFK and this one.
Yeah, and then there's also the smaller, like Leafgate. I think was some of the most important work we've ever done on this show. We've done a lot of important stuff. Well, all right, buddy. Where can people watch and view and get down with all the Lee Campness?
Well, everybody, if you like this show, you'll notice we have no advertisements. So basically, if you want to see this show continue, which it might not, we're thinking of canceling it tomorrow. If you want to see this show continue, go to liberapay.com/government secrets, liberapay.com/government secrets, and become like a member. Very, very cheap. You could become a member at like $1 or whatever the fuck it works for you. But yeah, my stuff is at radindiemedia.com and leecamp.com are the 2 main places to find my stuff.
Yeah, folks, liberapay.com/government secrets. We appreciate all of you that have been donating up to this point, and any new ones we very much appreciate. Of course, you can go to grahamelwood.com and other ways to support what I do, Political Vigilante, and also rockfin.com, where you can support both Lee and myself and everybody else over there for as little as $10 a month, and then all the free ways, to support our show. So thanks. That's our show.
Thanks, man. I will see you next week, probably. If people donate. Later, man.
Yep. All right, buddy. Take care. Hey, everybody. Thanks for watching. We are still in our 9th month of demonetization from YouTube. So support what we're doing at patreon.com/GrahamElwood or rockfin.com/GrahamElwood, which is a blockchain cryptocurrency platform. It's free to sign up, and there's a premium level at $10 a month. And for that, you get everybody on the platform's premium content. Myself, Lee Camp, Ron Placone, Jimmy Dore, Whitney Webb, Kim Iverson, Abby Martin, and many, many others. You can also support what we're doing at Venmo at Graham-Elwood and go to grahamelwood.com. We have a PayPal button and a PO box. I also have crypto wallets, which are all in the show notes. Thanks for supporting what we do.